Way to go, Trent.
So what's filming us? These cameras?
Yeah.
Okay.
What? It's not. We're live already.
Yep.
What? You didn't tell us that.
No. 3, 2.
Liar. Hey, everybody. It's Jonathan Harmon with the J Harmon Home Team, powered by Keller Williams. And we are here in Spread the Positive Studios at Cedar Glade. And my friend Trent's back there producing things and not telling us when he actually started the live. So how long have we been live now, Trent?
33 seconds.
Oh, okay. That's not too bad. Do we have sound?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Okay, great. Anyway, so I got to give Trent a little crap about that. But I've got two of my good friends here. I've got Mr. Tab Talbott of Gateway Title and Talbott Legal. Tab Talbott Esquire, as I like to call him. Tab, when are you just going to adopt it? Like I'm going to do a change.org or whatever it is. And
I have a tough time with your suggestion. You've got a lot of good ideas, but I don't think that's a good one.
But that's not one of them.
No. little old school for my taste.
You worked hard for that.
You did.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
did.
Yeah. My
Be proud.
doesn't impress my wife at all. Though,
Oh, I'm sure it doesn't. Or your kids probably, right? Yeah. And then my buddy Charles Stevens over here. How you doing, man?
It's doing well.
It's been a little bit since I've hung out with you.
Yep.
But one of my oldest clients, not in age, but in longevity as far as our working relationship goes. We were just talking about that. I think it was the 4th house that I ever listed was y'all's house. And also one of the first investors that I got to work with and kind of help form some strategy and identify some good properties and that kind of thing. So long relationship there.
Yeah, and I appreciated that. I mean, over time, I reach out from time to time and just talk to you and say, what do you think about now?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Well, it depends. It's usually the answer, right?
Well, it's a good deal or not. You just have to know the difference and be able to ask the right people the right questions.
That's right. That's it. And positioning, timing is everything. So what we're going to talk about today, and I love this topic with you guys specifically. And we're gonna kind of take a few twists and turns with this, but real estate investing as a means of retirement planning and savings. So Tab, with Talbott Legal, you're doing a lot of estate planning and things like that. So I want to get some info from you, some insight on how to do that the right way and how to even transfer properties and things like that. Because, ultimately retirement savings is about enjoying your retirement years, but then it's also about having a legacy to hand over to your next generation. And, with a little bit of planning on the front end, you can do a whole lot more on the back end. And that's what I'd like to get your insight on. And then Charles, as somebody that's,
I was wondering what that was going to be.
Yeah. As someone that's doing it, what is it? How do you think through it? How do you identify a property? How do you calculate rents? I had that question from some folks. Like, where do you go just to figure out what do you rent a place for? And those are some good questions for us to start with. So, let's just jump in and Charles, let's start with your story as far as why you decided that you wanted to acquire and accumulate some properties for rental. Because real estate investing is a broad topic. There's lots and lots of different ways you can go with it. There's people that flip houses, there's people that buy and hold and rent them out. There's people that buy commercial, there's people that buy residential, there's people that land speculate. I mean, there's lots and lots of different ways to invest in real estate. You chose kind of the old steady buy and hold, let's rent some houses out. Why?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest challenge is thinking about it. So to background, was in the military for several years, didn't save a lot of money during that process. I mean, military people don't make a ton, raising a family, something going down that path. So you get out of the military, come home, get a job, then you have to jumpstart the process. So some of the things I thought about is going through there and, had a family, ended up with an extra house, you'd say, going through a divorce and bought a house and then getting remarried. And so you've got this extra house. What am I going to do with this? Is now a good time? Where are you at in your life? All of those questions kind of come up. And then you immediately start looking at, so what does the future hold? Where am I at? So, I mean, initially I took kind of a snapshot of where I was, where I wanted to be, kind of did some of the retirement. I didn't meet anybody or go see anybody, but I read enough books, magazines. I can't read a book, I fall asleep. So I have to read magazines, read a magazine, figure that out. And then says, okay, if I can make it work, I started with one and rented that. And then through some life events, I come into some money. And then one of those, I says, I don't need this today. If I keep it, I'm going to spend it on something frivolous. So let me put it to work. And that's how we kind of got started with that process of understanding what it looks like. Where can I go? Come talk with you. Somebody's kind of emerging in that market to understand. And the big picture is just how can I get to where I wanted to be from where I'm at today. And one of those things, and we'll talk about it, is using other people's money for your benefit.
For sure. So, when you talk about saving and working towards retirement, Tab, you can kind of chime in on this. There's so many different things you can do. I mean, people will buy and hold properties. They'll, everything from buying an insurance policy that has a return on it to, investing in the stock market, mutual funds, Roth IRA. I mean, there's just gazillions of different ways to work towards retirement. What, from your perspective, from a legal perspective, is there a benefit of one over the other? Is real estate a beneficial thing as opposed to stock market investing, or does it matter? What do you think?
Well, I'm not a financial planner, so I'm probably not the best one for that. But, from a tax standpoint, there's really, we all know these, or at least I hope we know these basic things about, a Roth, for example, right, is tax free. And then you have what, a 1031 exchange would be it's a deferred tax, right? We can talk about that. You have things that, reduces your income, like contributions for 401k, that kind of thing. So, I know enough about that just to be dangerous. When I'm looking from an estate planning standpoint, we've got a lot of different assets. And so, I wouldn't want to say one is better over the other. I mean, I can speak from personal experience that, I've got 4 units that I have investment property, and it's strictly for retirement purposes for me. I mean, I'm in no, have no interest, those guys that call and text every day.
I told one today that I'd sell one of my units for, I said, I won't take a penny under $2 million.
Right.
And I actually said that. And they said, well, is there any wiggle room in that? And I said, I won't take a penny under $2 million.
Right.
All right. 19999.
Yeah. Well,
nope. $2 million.
So how old is your roof, sir?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like how old's your HVAC unit?
They said, are you doing any work on the house? I said, it's 100+ years old. Yes, I'm constantly doing work on it.
So, so I look at it, like I said, I can put a little personal taste to it. I will say, and again, we can get into these things later if you want. I'm not sure what the agenda is, but there are certain trusts that, you can set up that can be nice. I'll put it that way. To be clear, when we're talking about trust, I mean, it's mainly a way just to avoid probate, right?
Sure.
And so I have all of my properties in a trust really for that reason, because I did not want, if something happened to my wife and I, with 7-year-old twins, I didn't want anyone have to worry about what are we going to do with all these properties floating around. And how do we get them into what would be a testamentary trust? And so what I like about what I've set up, if something happens to us, it's seamless, because the trust owns it now, and the trust will own it if we're gone. And so my trustee can sell them if he feels like it, or he can just keep them as income and, for whatever. So I like that. There's also Tennessee, believe it or not, a lot of the codes we have one of the few states where we have codified our trust laws. And so what that means is they've got more gravity than perhaps other states. And one of the best things we have, in my opinion, is what's called a community trust. And again, that's what we have our setup in. What's cool about that is you get an advantage on a step-up basis. So, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, but as you know now, if you were to die, right, and you have an asset, you get the advantage of that step-up basis. Your heirs do.
So
right?
what that means is, just to make
Yeah,
sure everybody
please,
understands.
yeah.
So a step up basis is, I own a property and I bought it 7 years ago,
Mhm.
and I bought it at $100,000, and I sell it this year at $200,000. Then I've got $100,000 capital gain.
That's correct.
Assuming we didn't do depreciation, all that kind of stuff.
That's
okay?
correct.
Simplify.
Yep.
So I've got $100,000 capital gain, and
Mhm.
I will have some tax liability on that if I sell it.
Mhm.
Okay, if I don't do a 1031 or some of these others.
Right.
Step up basis means if I don't sell it, but I
Mhm.
die, and my heir receives it at the point of my death,
Yes.
and it's worth $200,000 at the point of my death,
Mhm.
their starting number is not $100,000 where I acquired it. It's $200,000, which is where
value.
they acquired it.
Which is correct. And so you get the same advantage of that with the trust, but one kind of little nuance. Yeah, not huge, but it's kind of nice to know. So let's say again, trust that I have, something happens to me. Okay, but my wife, who wants nothing to do with
The rental.
rental investment, right? So she says, "Well, I don't.
And Charles is like,
Right.
yep.
Okay, I don't want these anymore. Okay, I'm
Mhm.
selling." She gets the step up right there.
Because
Is
the
it time
trust
frame?
acquired them,
Mm-hmm.
and then she acquired them at
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So a little bit of advantage there that you get, some flexibility that you wouldn't get that with a married couple,
Mhm.
because if that were to happen and if I only had the asset in my name, and she were to keep it, well, obviously she were to keep it, but you wouldn't get that. It depends on how your heirs are set up, but it's a nice little nuance that you don't get.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
You and your wife good? Because I just understood that she could knock you off. That's what I just read. Read right in there.
Yeah, well,
And we get really
trust me,
personal on Table Talk
if she wanted to knock me off, she would have done it much sooner.
a
than this.
long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've given her many reasons.
Like you, my wife wants nothing to do with
Right, and that's fine, right?
and it really is.
And I don't want anything to do with the day to day either. I have, he's a fraternity brother that I trust implicitly, who does this for a living, and
So
he
you
takes
manage
care of.
them for
Yeah,
you.
and I'm happy to pay him
Mhm.
each month
Because I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I like to be involved.
Right.
And surprisingly enough, it's not that much work
Mhm.
if you do some of the normal standard
The initial legwork.
legwork and then
Mhm.
just monthly maintenance kind of things. Remembering asking questions of your tenants. Of
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
And it tends to work to my advantage.
For sure. So, Charles, let's go back. Why did you choose, of all the various things out there, why rentals specifically?
So for me, I'll go back to, so I built houses when I was a kid. So I used to work for a construction company called R&O Construction, my brother-in-law. And I learned a lot about the houses and I actually liked them. My grandfather owned properties in Franklin, Tennessee. And it's one of those things that I learned early, they never lose value. They may decrease in value for a moment, but they're a tangible asset that you can, as long as you take care of them, they will last for eons for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those type items for me that I wanted that offset anything I had in say my 401k or Roth or, my other type investments. I mean, to me, it was almost diversification. I've got some money in stocks. I've got, your house 401, your own personal house. Then you've got your 401k. Those are all the things that you have from your normal life. This is one where even when you think about inflation and some other things that are just normal parts of life, you offset that. You can hedge your bets and maintain something that, again, goes back to, for me, is there a way that I can have people pay for my benefit? And that was one of it, because I didn't have enough money to buy a business that I wanted to run. And,
Sure.
Which is the other way that a person makes good money.
Right.
Not working for another person or the man, I guess you might say.
Yeah. So, one of the things in owning some rentals as well, and I also own a couple of Airbnbs. I know you wanted to ask some questions about that. We'll get into some of that, but one of the things that we always look at when we're trying to value, and this is sort of like using price per square foot as the way that you value a house. You can look at it, and it's important, and it's a good comparison. It's not the way that you necessarily value a house, but one of the things in rental property is cap rates. So do you guys look at cap rates? Is that something that you even really factor in? Yeah. So again, it's one of those things.
Yeah. I'm not that sophisticated.
Well, and a cap rate's super simple. So it basically says, what is your annual income on the property? And then you divide that by how much it costs. And then that gives you your rate of return on the income only. Right. And so what's important, you were talking about this, that you have an income side, but you also have an appreciation side. And here in the last year and a half, we've been enjoying tremendous appreciation on properties. We actually just pulled those numbers, August to August, and then again September to September. Rutherford County saw 27% appreciation, which is insane. Normal is like 4
year over year.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what attracted me to the buy and hold, but it is different than flips, and flips provide a lot more cash as long as you don't buy dumb. But the flips also require a lot more effort, One of the questions that I get pretty often is when is a good time for me to invest? So we just talked about 27% appreciation, right? Well, you look at this and you say, okay, if I had bought last year and when prices were really high, it would look like a deal this year.
Yeah.
Right. So is it dumb to buy a rental property, in your opinion, today?
You want to go first?
I think dumb would be a strong word. I think back about when I started, and generally I think this is the case when after you do it a while, and this is not just with rental properties, things that you take risk on, maybe, or it seems like risk. You say, I should have done it sooner, right?
Yes.
Now, and I think about that, but I also try to be philosophical about it and say, perhaps I was not ready at that time either, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did it when I was ready, and so I think that's the first question anybody has to ask is, are you ready? Because I always look at it, is this going to put me, I don't like stress. I am like, stress is poison to me. Okay. So hence why I've got like the guy that takes care of the, I don't want it. So anytime I look at anything that I do, I ask myself, how much stress is this going to add? If the answer is hardly any, I'm not going to lose sleep over if I can make the note, from month to month, that kind of thing. And then I trust that appreciation is going to occur, not always, but most likely, the numbers make sense. Then I would say go for it. Even in today's climate, I would say go for it. None of us know, right? I mean, I had the conversation today. I mean, who really knows? We could just be at the beginning of all this.
Well, look at 2008,
Yeah.
right? Everybody was riding high and everything was feeling great.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of people had no idea that we were on an edge of a cliff.
That's correct. Right. And so maybe we are, maybe we aren't, there's arguments to be made both ways. I mean, in our little bubble of Middle Tennessee, it's a simple supply demand issue,
Mm-hmm.
right?
But when is that going to solve? When is that going to rectify itself? And
how does it rectify itself?
Right. What does that look like? I think.
I mean, they don't make more land for us to build on.
Yeah.
We can't just all of a sudden get an influx of lumber and labor. You know what I mean?
And that's one of the reasons why I like Smyrna Murfreesboro area. To be honest with you, is that we are not building up. We are building this way,
which makes the land more expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You go to Nashville, I mean, prices may be higher, but in a year, 2 more high rises go up.
Mm-hmm.
There's 1,000 more. We may not have that kind of benefit.
Well, and even on the smaller residential, they're taking 1 and turning it into 4. They're increasing density tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously there was a really good time to buy.
Yes,
right.
Sure.
So for those that bought, good for you. But again, just to go back to that question, I wouldn't that if it was me and I'm trying to build something. I'm dedicated to this, which is part of what Lane and I do. We're dedicated to this concept of diversifying, right? Not only from an investment standpoint, from tax implications,
Sure.
whatever it may be, right? If you're dedicated to that concept, then and again, you can use the bank's money, and you have some that you can put into it, and you're not going to lose sleep. I wouldn't discourage.
Well, I would have to run the numbers again because
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
part
always run the numbers.
because that's the part that scares me today. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I've called you a couple of times going, what do you think is where we at? Kind of where's the market going? And with it still going higher, I mean, rates, I'm not sure what you can get sustainably because one of the benefits for my rentals is, well, I have never made a rental payment on any of my properties myself.
Right.
That's been one of
Sure.
those just
Yeah.
fantastic deals. The other one that
Well, your first renter came in and paid what you were asking and did like, what was it, like a 3-year lease or something crazy, and paid it all up front or something
well, he
ridiculous.
wanted
I
to make
remember
sure
that.
he paid a year up front.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's fantastic. But that also has its element of
Well-
fear, which stress. And for me, that kind of stressed me a little bit because that's
Mhm.
too obvious. Why can't you buy your own?
Mhm.
But all of our rentals today have 2-year leases on them. I mean, that's the standard now for me. Now, I don't ask the premium dollar. I ask a little bit below that because I'd rather have a tenant that's in there
Mhm.
that's dependable, good to my property, and not moving out anytime soon. Because one of the biggest problems or most of the damage for a property and costs that I incur as a real, landlord. I hate that term, but that is
Move
they
in,
change
move out.
over because
Mhm.
I've got to either put carpet in or maybe it's paint, but
Mhm.
and I've got to deal with them in kind of a weird way. But if you sign it to your lease, and as long as taxes don't go up and I'm still not losing money, you can re-up and I won't raise the rate. And it's one of those where I've kept one couple in there 7 years through
Mhm.
that process. And it's really kind of beneficial. And as long as I make a couple of bucks every month and can reinvest it, to your point,
Mhm.
no stress, easy for me, I go. So the problem with buying today, and again, back to the question, and I know I ramble a little, but is your return is going to be
Yeah.
much longer. You're going to have to, you're not looking at a 15-year payback kind of period.
Mhm.
It's really 20, 25 now.
Well, and that goes back to
Yeah.
the cap rate issue as well. When I was buying the bulk of my properties, a 10% cap rate, where you essentially made 10% on your investment per year just on the income.
Mhm.
That was what you looked for. I mean, that was kind of the standard. Now, Rutherford County, you're sitting at, I mean, if you're between 7 and 8,
Yeah.
that's good. So then you start thinking, well, can I make better than 7 or 8 on the stock market? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You sure
Higher
can.
risk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, higher risk, different kind of risk,
Mhm.
right? And so then you start having the diversification, communication. What's up?
Hey, we got a comment.
We got a comment.
We got a comment.
Oh my word, it's the first one.
Producer
Producer Trent jumping in. What's the comment?
Yeah, so from JD, shouts to JD. He says, clearly I know Nil. Shouts to his show. JD knows Nil. He says, but is any investment in property in the Ruco area considered a bad idea based on rapid valuation? Even a home you basically rebuild from the ground up just for the land seemingly would repay and profit in a short amount of time. Am I wrong?
No. So if you guys, I'll jump in on
Go
this,
for
and
it.
then you guys go add to it if you want. This actually goes back to the when is a good time to become an investor. And I'm going to go a little bit off of what Tab was saying, and that is, I think the best time to become an investor is when you're ready to become an investor. And here's the deal: if you were sitting around last year going, "Oh, is this a good time to become an investor? Holy cow, prices are so high. When are they going to come down?" And you waited another year, well, guess what? You lost 27%, right? Or didn't gain 27%.
Right,
How about that?
right.
Because you haven't capitalized on it yet.
That's right. Exactly. So, kind of is there a bad investment in Rutherford County? It was ultimately the question from JD, and thank you, JD, for asking that. I would say it's possible for you to have a bad investment anywhere if you don't know how to capitalize on the investment, and if you way over it, if you're reckless about it, acquiring it. Is that the best way to say it?
Well, and I would just say again, I think it's what your strategy is. So
Yes.
if I look at it long term. So yeah, if you bought something, chances are seemingly good right now. If you buy something today, it's going to be worth more tomorrow, right?
But don't be stupid.
But I don't look at that's not why I buy investment properties. I'm not looking at what they're going to be worth in 2, 5, 10 years. I hope that by the end, when I'm ready to sell, they're worth at least what I paid for them.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think there's probably a good chance that's going to happen, right?
Yes. But you're looking at the income side.
That's
of
what
it.
I'm looking for.
Yeah. And you're looking at
for
that
passive income.
That's right. And that person's
that gets
paying
into the part about the margins right now.
Mhm.
It's very difficult now when you look at, I don't know how many auctions I've been to just out of curiosity. And I'm like, I don't understand it unless you have cash
California
just
money.
sitting around and you just, again, for the sake of diversification, you're just like, I'm going to put some money into real estate.
Well, and
I
think,
don't understand it.
I think
I can't do it.
I think that's employing a different strategy. So if you're purchasing properties, let's say downtown, and your plan is to do kind of the Nashville model where you're going to take one down and put 4 up. And there's a little bit of that happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you're essentially holding to speculate to sell later, or if you're going to flip that property, you can acquire it at X number of dollars per square foot, put this much more into it and sell it for this much more. But from a buy and hold standpoint, I think overpaying is not necessarily your best strategy. But again, it goes back to, like, for me, where my 3 of my rental properties are, they're literally in a triangle, like
right
together.
You.
Yes. And so for me, I paid a little bit more for those because of the convenience of
course
of maintaining them. And I think that, again, I think you're right. I think it depends on what your strategy is. You need to be very clear about what that is. Is it a good idea that your mortgage on that property is $1,600 and the rent is $1,500? That's dumb.
Concerning.
Right.
Yeah, that's dumb. Don't do that.
Right.
Your wife wouldn't like that.
No.
Even if she wasn't involved, she wouldn't like that.
and because I'm not a handy person, flipping doesn't appeal to me.
Right.
There's
a time commitment. Time is an asset as well.
Absolutely.
It's a resource that you have. So
Mhm.
you have time and you have money.
Right.
And which one are you going to use?
Exactly. Yeah.
I used to think that being near the interstate, fast access to 24 to go somewhere, it was a benefit to a location. I mean, you always hear people talking about location. And they talk about, and I think of that when I say that to a school or conveniences. I'm not so sure being close to the interstate is a benefit any longer based on the telecommuting.
I don't think it is. I don't think it matters as much. At least, let's say, I think location is down to county at this point, right? Rutherford County is not the same as Coffee County. It's not the same as Bedford County. Not that any of them are bad. They're just not the same.
Yeah, I would say it's more of an indirect benefit now. So, for example, we have a title office in Manchester. And the reason we invested in Manchester is because we feel like Coffee County it's a drive till you can buy scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we think it's going to be a high growth. It's a good place to bet on the future.
By the way, 27% appreciation September to September in Coffee County as well.
There you go. See,
so we got our girl Rachel down there.
Yeah,
and
Rachel's killing it.
She's tearing
it
up.
And she works with our folks down there. And so that's how I think indirectly, you don't ignore that, right?
Sure.
Obviously, people can move down the interstate. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I agree. Like whether here in town, what does it matter anymore? It doesn't matter.
It's going to take you 10 minutes no matter where you're at. Location
10. Where do you live?
Murfreesboro is 30 minutes from Murfreesboro.
Where do you live, man?
Yeah.
I live close to the.
You have a helicopter?
Close to the interstate. Trust me, that's kind of that old school model.
So let's do this one real quick. What kind? You don't want to manage your properties.
No,
you do.
Mm-hmm. If I had more time. On the time
what's
point,
the difference? Yeah.
If I had more time or I wasn't trying to do what I'm doing, during the day, I'd be fine with that. It wouldn't bother me one bit, but that's not where I want to spend my time.
So stick with me on this. Yeah. I'm not insulting.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an excuse or do you think that's a mindset? Do you think that, because the reality is you have time for whatever you want to have time for.
Sure. I don't go to the gym because I don't have time or because I don't prioritize it. Right.
Or because you hate the gym.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't like the gym.
Or because you're just naturally gifted. And
yeah. So, no, I think you're absolutely right. I've chosen that I don't want to deal with that. But for me, again, because a big motivator for me is less stress in life.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to pay the 8%, per unit that I pay my guy. I'm happy to do it. Doesn't bother me one bit.
What about you?
I Well, that's part of my growth savings plan. That's money I don't want to spend or give away
Sure.
To somebody else, especially those months when there's nothing going wrong. You talk to the tenant and it's like, oh, everything's going well, great. Electric bill is $100 a month. Great. I appreciate the insulation you put in there last year, that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, great. I screwed that up. I need to raise the rent.
Yeah.
If they're too happy, then it becomes sedentary. But that gives me an opportunity. Jonathan, when we talked about this originally, he gave me the skills to employ a good item. And part of that is to go to them and collect the rent. And what's interesting is that while you're there, change the air filters. And because in a property, you've got 3 major challenges. You've got your AC unit, you've got your roof, and then you've got anything that's connected to the water system. All of those things. So if I go to change the air filters myself and collect the rent, it puts me inside the property. I can do that look around. I can ask questions, do this, do that.
Make sure they're upholding the terms of your lease, pets and smoking and whatever.
Yeah, just all of those type things. And it makes it really simple and easy. And now over time, I've moved away from that for certain tenants, like that 6-year tenant. We went to Venmo and called it done because it was easy.
And you knew they were taking care of your property.
Drop the filters off and when I'm round and be done.
Well, let's last question, and this is just more of an open topic here. Just some tidbits or tips that you've accumulated. You've each bought. We're actually very similar in doors and everything. That you've kind of run into over the years in acquisition, in management. You just hit on one with the go to the property. What are some other things that the aspiring or brand new landlords out there can look at?
I'll start and say that one of the things that my wife, while she hates them, she is a good, alter ego for me. Some of these, because sometimes I do want to, add granite countertops when it's not needed, or this type of that or type. So it's good to have another person to bounce ideas off of, to understand. But one of her criteria, which I kind of appreciate, is, would I live in it?
Yes.
Would I be the person, if we lost everything, could you live there? And does that make you happy? And if that's the case, then it's a good rental for me. And that's kind of what we've also looked at when we go look at new properties. We've been to a couple of auctions. I don't know how the people do it either. It's silly and stupid.
Yeah, that's a different philosophy than mine.
For sure.
The last 2 I've bought, I never looked at. I only trusted the property manager.
Your guy, property manager.
And I looked at the numbers, and the first time I saw him was when we went up to the wedding a few weeks ago. I said, I guess we should drive by and see what these houses look like, and I was surprised they were actually
pretty nice.
Yeah. Cuter than I realized. So, but that's a bit of that's my personality. I don't want to be involved. I'm a numbers guy, and as long as
it's a pure investment for you.
Absolutely, there's really no emotion at all.
That'd be like you walking into a business that you own a stock in, like, and judging the value of the stock.
Right. I really don't care any more than that. And so it's a different way of looking at it.
I'm kind of with you, and I'll tack onto that. So I definitely would I live there. That's a criteria for me. And I firmly believe that if you give somebody a nice place to live in, they're more likely to take care of it. If you give them a crap hole, they're going to treat it that way, right? And I'd say 95% of the time that is held true for all of my rental properties. My big piece of advice is your philosophy is a little bit different on this. Because I want to manage my own properties, buy them close together. Keep them close together. And I know your strategy is slightly different on that as well. But I like them close so that it's easier for me to manage.
I like them close. So 2 in Murfreesboro and 2 in Smyrna, they are close to each other, but I diversified. One of my fears in Smyrna was, what if Nissan, decides to pull out? What is that going to do to that economy? We know what it's going to do. So I didn't want to put all my eggs in that basket. So, which is kind of where we ended in Murfreesboro. Now, what's interesting is I never thought that State Farm would have pulled out of the building they pulled out of, because I've got one on both sides. And now I'm like going and trying to understand, what is that doing is it doing anything? And in the well, I'm really upset the city pulled out of it, because that would have been a great centerpiece.
Yeah.
And I'm a little hesitant who's going to move in there, but I like to be near industry, because I want people that are renting. We know, not say they're different caliber of people, but ultimately they're beginning,
ties them to that piece of the community
right.
as
so
well.
wherever they work, they're going to be more happy. So I mean,
Mhm.
a good school and some industry or jobs. So I think those two go to hand in hand.
Bounce this one off of you. I was advised when I first got into it that buy small houses to rent, that the quote starter home always gives you an exit strategy. So if you need to sell it, you can always sell a starter home.
I don't like always and never. I never say never and always.
I never say never.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't. I really, I think every situation is, I mean, obviously, yeah, 3-2 all day, right?
Sure.
Absolutely, of course. But
I mean, that's the formula that all the big hedge funds are using.
right.
3,
They
2,
do it
2.
for a reason, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, of course, but I mean, situational.
I don't own no executive homes, but I don't think I own anything necessarily that's considered to be a starter home. Everything is 1,800 or up.
Yeah.
And I've got a 4-3 as well as a couple of 3-2s.
Yeah.
So
Give you an example. There was Jamie Averwater's partner, his father, Tom Hyde.
Mhm.
He, from what I understand, so I may be not saying this correctly, but he would buy executive homes and rent them. He had created this niche where it was Japanese executives with the Smyrna outfit, right, with Nissan, and he would rent these very nice homes to them, for standard periods of time, and I'm sure he did very well with that, but he saw something there that not everybody sees, and
Well, and that nobody else was filling.
right,
Yeah.
so
and he had the income or assets to acquire those.
Yeah.
Because that's the other piece of that. You got to be willing to risk leaving them open
mhm.
for an extended period
And that
of
kind of
time.
gets in the Airbnb thing, I think, where I've never ventured into it, and I'd like to. It's definitely something I want to put in the portfolio.
It's fun. So I've got 2 Airbnbs.
Yeah.
They are apartments that are attached to long-term rentals. So the long-term rentals basically pay, not basically, they do. They cover the full amount of the mortgage. But that's all, right? Like there's not extra.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I'm weighing the risk out, if I make literally anything per month on the Airbnb, I'm in great shape. And I will tell you, they stay booked all the time.
And that's still and I know where you live, and that's a desirable area, but I'm the same way.
I'm shocked.
And I hear this all the time.
But they're not huge. So this is
Yeah.
the thing. So like my Airbnbs are $50 to $70-ish a night.
Okay.
And then there's a pretty big cleaning fee that's on top of that.
Right.
So somebody can stay there for 3 nights and it's,
not
$300
really
or whatever,
okay.
$350.
Cheaper than a hotel.
But it's, I mean, every month it's, 4 to maybe 6 nights that aren't booked. And every other night is booked.
Really?
Yeah. And it's the secret to an Airbnb. So different from you, but more like you, got to get a good cleaning crew. And I'm going to throw it out there. 2 sisters made to clean. Samaria Ritchie, you are a freaking genius. And she has gotten us down to a science on how those places get flipped. She can flip it in about an hour. We've got it. I've made her a co-host on it. So she sees the calendar, and I mean, she has taken it and run with it. And it's been a very lucrative thing for her business as well. And it's a straight pass through on the cleaning fee. I don't make a dime off of that. Right. And we've got a laundry service that we've vetted out, and it's working great. But without that, the wheels fall off.
Right. No COVID impact.
Yeah, maybe a month. But even there, Airbnb actually stepped up and kind of helped us out. Yeah. So, I mean, it was, I'll tell you guys, it is the most shocking thing ever, but we just don't have issues.
Yeah.
Did your original properties have the extra apartment with them?
Mm-hmm.
And so
when I acquired them,
when you bought them for that intensive purpose.
That's it.
Okay. That makes sense. Because
I
got a room upstairs.
Hey, try it, man. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa, don't kill me on that one. So, anyway, so real quick, let's do this. Talbott Legal. Throw us your plug, man.
estate planning for everyone. I mean, that's something I'm really passionate about, and I really like. I just feel like it should be. It's something everybody needs, and I like
Does
to.
everybody need it?
If you're gonna die, then I would, yeah. Then
you
you need
recommend
some form of estate planning. yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So, but yeah, I'm passionate about it. I like helping people do that, and it's one of those things too where I don't have when they're ready to talk, they're ready. So it's generally a good folks, good conversation.
It's not exactly the most comfortable conversation, is it?
Surprisingly, that part again, there's a mentality for most folks. Once they've decided that I need to sit down and do this, they're pretty matter of fact about it, because we're really just talking about legacy, and how do we want to protect it and pass it on. So most people, it's a good thing. I love being someone that they've got a problem and I'm going to help them find a good solution.
If you got a problem, Tab will solve it.
So I love playing that role, and that's so that's my plug.
And sounds like your rental properties are pretty booked up. You got anything coming open anytime soon?
Lisa and I were talking about today. We have two in January, so they've got till beginning of December to tell me based on the contract, and we're trying to decide if we want to let them stay or that piece. I mean, it's just not that they're bad. So if they're listening, it's not one of those, but it's just one of those. It's the larger of my houses. So it's the 4-3, and I think we're undervaluing it some.
Sure.
So it's an opportunity. So I'll let them. They will dictate that future.
The ball is in your court.
Yeah. So if they move out, then we'll probably do a little quick reno and put it back on the market. I mean, like I said, the coolest thing about them is I've never made a house payment on any of those properties.
Yeah.
I've always done it. And traditionally we've got a cleaning crew. And so a friend of mine's cleaned the last one when I was in a pinch, kind of took care of some things for me. So that was great. But we typically are able to turn them around and have them in by the 5th set of somebody moving back in. And it's just finding the right carpet company, the right person for that and take care of it. And the cool thing is that renters oftentimes, if you treat them well, they will treat you well.
100% agree with that.
Especially when you're finding them. I'm very upfront. I meet them at the property and I treat it like a home sale.
Yeah.
So we do an interview kind of like over the phone just to see if it fits. Then if we'll go down that path and we'll meet them at the property, walk them around, show them, let them ask questions of us and the property. And then, and only then, if we still think it's a good deal, do we have them go through that application process.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yep, exact same. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your podcast.
I'm
viewers.
So glad you were here. Hey, JD, I hope we answered your question.
Yeah, you got to shout out your boy real quick. Your underwriter.
Oh, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. So, yes, thank you. So Brian Nail, if you're watching, and I hope that you are, Brian Nail has decided that he is going to help fund this show. So he is underwriting us. He is giving some money to Trent and Spread the Positive to help offset the cost of that. And y'all, if you don't know Brian, you need to just meet him and have coffee with him, even if you don't need his services right now. Such a good dude over at Iberia Bank Mortgage, and just a sharp, purposeful, caring lender. And I mean, he's just darn good at his job. And quite frankly, I like drinking bourbon with him too. I mean, let's be honest here.
Yeah. Why do we always come back to that same thing?
I mean, but anyway, he's awesome. So Brian, thank you so much for underwriting this. And thank you, Trent, for producing it. Spread the Positive.
Yes, sir.
What is it? Shining light on
bringing light to what's going right.
Darn it. I never can get that first word.
Yeah.
Bringing light to what's going right.
Speaking of that, should we the joke?
Oh, that's right.
It's a Moth life.
We've got to have the joke. All right. Moth? Yeah. So one of Tab's favorite jokes, and consequently one of my favorite jokes as well. Tab, tell us a joke.
So if you've heard this, I'm sorry. because I won't do it justice. And if you haven't heard this,
I've been
I'm
looking forward to
sorry.
this for like
So-
2 weeks now.
but Norm Macdonald, who was a comedian, passed away not too long ago, and a lot of
R.I.P. Norm.
a lot of his late night appearances were showing up on the internet, and one I'd never seen before, but I guess it's called the Moth Joke. And so it goes something like this. A moth walks into a podiatrist
Office.
Yes. So a moth walks in the podiatrist's office, and the doc says, "What's wrong?" And the moth says, "Where to begin?" He's like, "I work all day for this guy named Gregory Ivanovich, and I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't think Gregory Ivanovich knows what I'm doing. I just know that he has power over me, and that makes him happy. But me, I just walk around in this malaise all day." Doctor says, "Okay, tell me more." He's like, "Well, and then I go home at night and roll over in bed, and there's this old lady staring at me. Don't even recognize her. Somebody I used to love. And then my youngest, Alexandria, she fell last year in the cold. The cold took her down like it did many of us. And but the worst is my oldest, Gregaro. I don't love him anymore. Every time I look at that cowardice face, it just reminds me of myself when I look in the mirror. If I was more brave, I'd just end it all, just all of it right now. I feel like a spider, even though I'm a moth that's just wrapped itself in this tangled.
Tab, you actually memorized the entire joke.
It's like verbatim. This is
you
incredible.
You memorized the whole thing.
So even though I'm a moth, I'm suffocating in this web of lies, and I'm just Doc. I'm not good. And so the doc says, "Moth, man, you need help, but you need to see a psychiatrist. Why in the world did you come in here?" The moth says, "Because the light was on."
I got you.
One of my all-time favorite jokes.
That's how you end the podcast. You killed that.
You had to watch that like 7
Oh
times.
my
gosh, yeah.
that was amazing.
Because that was good.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
I was
was
like,
so
"I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it."
that's right. Oh, thank you, Norm Macdonald, for all
Yeah.
of your
R.I.P.
contributions.
Norm, man.
Yeah.
He's a
Watch
legend.
that if you
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, thanks for watching the Table Talk, where there's always a seat at the table with the J. Harmon Home Team. Jonathan Harmon, J. Harmon Home Team's powered by Keller Williams. We got producer Trent over there, spread the positive. Thank you, Brian Nail. Again, I will mention you at the beginning next time as well. Now that I remember to do that, not a pro here. We got Tab Talbott with Talbott Legal and Gateway Title, and then my buddy Charles, who's got potentially maybe a couple of rental properties coming up in January. If you need more info on that, give me a shout and I'll get you guys connected. So thanks for watching. If you have any real estate questions, give us a shout.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.